Agreed, 100%, Ricardo. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for all of you for sharing your stories. I think, for myself, I'm an LA native and still being in a very diverse Latinx city, I felt very lonely in architecture, actually. And I kept on, I think, reminding myself that at some point I would come across someone who would be an ally to me. And I would hope that it would be a Black or brown woman, right? Someone of color that I can relate to. And it was something that I struggled to until recently, really. And I think being in this pandemic, as hurtful and painful it has been, it has also opened the door for me to meet new people like yourself, Ricardo, being able to connect to Vanessa, right? And even calling Carmen, in the middle of the day sometimes and tapping her in, something which I wouldn't have done before COVID. And so I think, it is very relatable when you all say, I didn't have a mentor. There was no one like me, right? And so how do we break that? And our question is really, how are you creating a safe environment for those who see you as a leader? Because for many of you, for many folks, and especially younger ones, you might be a leader to them, right? So how do you create that safe environment if you already have created one, or how do you amplify those spaces so that way people feel, that safety net that when we say it's a safe space, right, for all to feel comfortable to be your most genuine self. And Olga will ask the second closing question.
So Catherine, I will tell you that it was someone in your position a couple of years ago at an OMA event that really got me motivated to change a lot of what I was doing with my career. There was a young lady, I don't know if you remember her, Diana. She ran one of the NOMA's chapters in LA. And she was speaking and she said, I've never met a Latina architect and I haven't even seen one in a book. And we are sitting in LA and she is saying that, and I'm going, wait a minute, there's something completely wrong here. And on that day, I was like, I never want to hear another female say that ever again. So it is my mission to make sure. So after that day, I went to AIA. I was like, where's the Leah? Why don't we have a Leah? We're going to start a Leah. So Leah started. I go to every NOMA event. I am the thorn in their side. Why aren't there Latino events in NOMA? Why don't we have Latinos? Okay, you need a new vice president. It's going to be Latino. It's going to be me. We're going to do it. And I've pushed, I left my job, started my own firm because I wanted to do things my way. But I felt like at this age and time, especially in LA where we are the majority, I never wanted to hear another student, female or male, ever say, I've not seen someone like me. When we have the potential to change that for them by going out there, by talking about our stories, by finding whatever avenue we need to share these stories with those kids so they feel represented, so they never feel the way we felt before. And that's sort of what motivates me to get involved in one too many thing at a time. But, I think it's important. And I feel like it took me a while to find my voice, but I want to use it to really empower others to change how we're seen and what you feel like you are.
I have a similar story, and I had been saying all of these things. Oh, we need more women in architecture, more people of color in architecture, and it starts at the schools. We got to open up the pipeline. They need more people who look like them. And then just one day, I was like, wait a minute, I'm the people who look like them. And so that's what motivated me to start teaching in architecture school, because if I'm asking people to do it, I gotta, why I can do it. Why don't I just do it? And that's really been rewarding and fulfilling, having, especially at the institution where I'm at FAU. It's the numbers, the demographics in that institution are very different than what we had at Tulane, where I went to architecture school. And it's been really nice, and it's been really rewarding. And at least all of my students can now say that they have had an Afro-Latinx teacher. So
that's great, Vanessa. I was going to say that, for me, and Catherine probably already knows my answer to this, but the first space that I really felt proud of in my Afro-Latinidad, especially within the profession of architecture, was in our Latinx and architecture calls, where I can just come in, even if I'm a little late, and just start kind of like ranting, just let everyone listen and just pour love on me, and just, get that support back. And that has been rewarding in and of itself. It's allowed me to really open up to other people in architecture that I probably wouldn't otherwise have opened up to, about the things that are going on. And I remember, I want to add Tuskegee to the list as well, because it was the first place that I really had to defend my Afro-Latinidad. And I remember going up to the dean, first year of school, freshman or sophomore year, I can't remember now. I don't want anyone to judge me for this, but I went up to him and I was like, "You would be so proud to know that I am the first Afro-Latino to grace the presence here at Tuskegee University." And I didn't say quite so snooty, but I was really feeling myself. And he was like, "Who told you that?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" There was another Afro-Latino, Afro-Cuban at that too, that made their way to Tuskegee University, Luis Delfin Valdez, and I will never forget that name. And I found his name and his photograph in the archives. And seeing that there was someone else like me that came to Tuskegee from Cuba, went back and gave back to the country, really allowed me to create a safe space for him. Now, my dean has since passed away. He passed very recently. He was, his obituary was recognized in through NOMA. His name was Richard K. Dozier. He lived in Tallahassee, Florida. And I will never forget Dr. Dozier's face when he looked at me. He just kind of, broke that down to me. And I wasn't upset, but he always let me know that at Tuskegee would always be a safe space for me to be Afro-Latino, to be Black, to be whatever I wanted to, because that's what the school prided themselves on, was their pride.
I love your old stories, Ricardo. That cracks me up, because I was in New York not long ago, well, in school at the time that I was there, and I was doing some research. And of course, I'm at the Schomburg, and Arturo Schomburg is one of the greatest scholars in Africana history, who's bliggity Black with some El DeBarge looking type hair, because he's 100% Boricua, right? And so like all of that, and that's early 1900s. So I love to hear that the stories of, how people that look like us or as we're coming to terms with trying to identify and trying to make sense of this world. The beauty of the story is that there's been so many of, Afro-Latinos that have been there for a long time, but before society had the nuance. Because remember, we're like 3 seconds into being able to say, if you got one drop in you, you are 100% bliggity Black. So that's another part of our conversation here, where we're teasing things out that, well, the law would have figured out for us. Ricardo, given the state at which you're in right now, the law may be getting ready to redefine that too soon. But all that said, I think my safe space, I'm gonna always say it's always been with my family, because there has never been any ambiguity since I was a kid, since before the term Afro-Latino existed. This was very open conversation in my household, which I gotta say is very unique, because my parents emigrated here my father had immigrated to this country about a year after King's assassination. And so it was made very clear for him where he was placed in this bigger spectrum. And I'm sure that has played some very formative role in the discussions and in the level of safety that I've had. So for me, I would say it's been in the home, but I would say professionally speaking, I didn't have my first educator of color until I was in college. And so the safe space that I'm creating now, I'm at the very least, whether I'm Afro-Latino or whatever, however, I want my students to at least say, hey, there's a principal and he looks different. that's at least a starting spot, because I very much so see my work as being the front line against the school to prison pipeline. And whether or not we're talking about Black or Latino, they're all going. They're all going. So, you know, that kind of anchors. And I'm blessed to serve the South Side of Phoenix, that is both very, very, very rich in its African-American history and very, very rich in its Latino history as well. And so being able to speak to the communities in a way where they both see me as integral parts of their own communities as well is something that has been very, very rewarding and refreshing. And then of course, students, just their minds blow when they try to put together the rhyme and the reason in the world that has been placed on top of them. And so just being present is disruptive, it's revolutionary. Just claiming our space in and of itself forces the conversation. And nothing about the four of us is quietly just sitting in those spaces either. So I really commend the work. And again, and I know we're not completely done yet, but you know, to our moderators and facilitators and to the amazing audience, I think that this is just such important work. No answers, but better questions.
Wow, thank you all for sharing your story. Again, I'm deeply moved. And just to kind of touch on one of your comments, Carmen, about not wanting to hear people say that, you know, I haven't seen a Latina or Afro-Latinx architect, or you name it, whatever it is, as far as whether it's in books or just in the spaces that they're also present in. You know, I'm kind of thankful for the power of social media at the same time, because that's how I met all of you, except for Omar, who we met years ago. But it's amazing how we can connect with other people through social media. And at the same time, it's kind of sad that for the first time in my career, I've met 3 Latinx designers. I never knew when that day would come, honestly. And so I am glad that with social media, we're able to connect, and which is why I really wanted to highlight these type of stories, because I never get to hear them, and I'm sure a lot of people never get to hear them. And just to close off the panel before I move to the Q&A, we've heard a lot of great things that you all have said. Any advice to the younger generation that may identify similarly to you?
I need to say, if you see someone that looks like you, just reach out. Just do not be afraid to reach out. I think you might get some, it might not all be successful, but do it. That's how you're going to start finding your tribe and your group of people. So just, you know, we're here for you. So just reach out.
Go to the schools.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the little kids. Let them see you now so that they can see their future selves.
Yeah, Omar and Carmen touched on some really great points. And, you know, even though I didn't find a lot of mentors that looked like me, people have been reaching out to me via social media and LinkedIn that look like me. And so, you know, that's what we're doing is important. To Omar's point, our presence is important in all of this, because, you know, we continue to reach out, we continue to just do events like this or tell our stories. People just come out of nowhere and just say, hey, I'm Afro-Latino. My own first cousin once removed, she found out about me through an article that was published in Austin Design Week. She ended up being, sorry, this is now getting into family stuff, but my cousin, her dad passed away in May, and I was the one who got the call. He passed away in Arizona. Her and I had started to connect in November, and she's his second daughter. And so her mother reached out. She saw another Maga and was like, there aren't a lot of Magas that are walking around that, you know, from our side of the island, from Cuba, from your dad or from your dad's side of the family, that are Cuban and from Banis and from Orguin. You need to reach out to him. But this space and this work brought me together with with family that me and my brother and sister have been trying to reconnect with, just outside of architecture. So just think about the things that in of itself can do. Our presence, here, to Carmen's point, reach out to us. I've reached out to mentors that are my friends now just by a LinkedIn message or, a random cold call or cold email. And they've been people that I've been able to lean on in this field. They're not all Black, which is not surprising, but that started a conversation. And had I not opened up my mouth to say something, I don't think anyone would have ever even knew that I had any interest in continuing to pursue architecture. So to that point, reach out to us, contact us, and to Omar's point, be present in the schools as well. Tuskegee University, you probably wouldn't even hope to find a Latino there because, it's an HBCU, but you'd be surprised how many Afro-Latinos probably have now heard of Tuskegee University, especially as they start to discover their Afro-Latinidad and start going there because they probably don't see themselves thriving at a PWI.
All great, great advice for younger people in our positions. And I'm going to build on that and just say, don't wait your turn. Don't wait until you're ready or qualified or whatever to do whatever it is that you want to do, you dream of doing, you wish you had when you were younger going through it. Just do it.
There's this idea of, we use it at my school quite a bit. Pardon the metaphor, considering we're talking about schools and nobody ever wants to talk about shooting in schools, but this idea of ready, aim, fire, that's not real life. Where they do that at? And with the pandemic, it's ready, fire, aim sometimes, and that's okay. And that is perfectly okay. Listen, when it comes to, we know that I struggle admittedly with the racial reckoning terms that happened. Look, they've been killing Black folks for a long time. The only thing that's new is the cell phones. That said, while it was hot in these streets to post a Black, Instagram, picture and we love Black people for 3 minutes, while all of that was happening in the streets and it was awesome, it was what it is a great opportunity for people to become informed about a whole heck of a lot of things, right? We are living in times right now where I would honestly tell anybody, to echo what everybody said, it sounds as simple as just get up and go and do it, but truthfully, yes, it is that straightforward. To what I would argue is to anchor yourself in figuring it out, but to ultimately be okay with the fact that you don't know, and that's okay. I think as professionals sometimes, and I do want to speak to this, and I don't want to place this on anybody else's shoulders than my own, but sometimes there's this element of, when you are the one, whatever that may be, you have this notion of the stereotype bias, where you feel like you have to be the representative for everything and all things Afro-Latino, or everything on your back at all times. And that is an extraordinary amount of psychological pressure and real pressure for anybody to place on top of themselves. So knowing that is the get down in a lot of the spaces in which we operate, and we're entre familia here and we're talking about safe spaces. The reality is that there has to be some kind of fortification that you do, and that comes with knowledge of self. Dive in, we're in the information age. I always tell everybody, not knowing is okay. Staying not knowing is not. Not knowing is okay, but staying in that space, that's not okay. And so trying to figure out, how do we learn a little bit more? What steps, what are people like that, where can I find allies? And those allies may not always come in the shape, way, or form that you think they may come. And sometimes the ones you think may be are the ones that hurt and cut you the deepest. So all of those things, I would really, really question, or really challenge our young folk and old folk like me alike, to really, really take a step back and realize that the system is not broken. The system is operating with fidelity. With fidelity. We have to take a step back and recognize, all right, where do we go? How do we do this? What's our next step forward? And what I love about all of this is it's cross-disciplinary. We should learn more. we should learn more. There should be more interdisciplinary discussions that are taking place to figure out what is the existence in life. Because I've come here today to share my story coming from a radically different field, right? Or so we think, radically different. And we come to find out there's a lot of similarities. So what does it look like? What is the experience, the lived experience? And what does it look like to actually find your way forward when maybe there haven't been too many people there have been there? And in some cases, and this has been the story for a lot of us, are active barriers. It's hard enough for everybody. But sometimes when active barriers get placed in front of you, that can be extremely challenging. So I hope that, you know, our stories have been refreshing in that sense. But I also want to welcome and encourage everybody that it is absolutely okay for you not to know what this looks like moving forward, so long as you're still moving forward.
Wow, thank you all for this wonderful and empowering responses. And I'm excited to hear and continue to learn more from all of you in the future, and just creating more spaces like these, right? Because they're very necessary. We received actually two questions in the chat, but we want to amplify one just because we're short on time. So it came from someone who's a viewer, and it says, it seems counterintuitive to ask how I as an African American can be an ally, but how can orgs like NOMA be more inclusive to the Afro-Latinx community and truly embrace the fullness of African diaspora? Because like Ricardo mentioned, it's an org for minority architects, not just African American Black architects.
I think Omar said it best. Knowledge, education. It's really creating the spaces for perhaps someone who feels really empowered about their Blackness and their truth to hear another side of the conversation about Blackness and the truth of being Black, that we all don't sit in the same space. And I think NOMA as an organization has had tremendous growth in the past couple of years, and with that comes, you know, a time to reassess where they're going. And it's an opportunity for us to be vocal about what we need, you know, because without members, NOMA is nothing. So as members, if we don't speak about our needs and we don't ask for these things, then we are as much part of the problem as everybody else. So I think, you know, just give us the space and allow for these conversations to happen.
Man, that's a lot. I kind of already said a little bit in the chat, and you know, it's mostly about having conversations about spaces like this, so knowledge and education. Because so the reason that comes to mind is because a mutual friend of some of us on this call once brought up to me about how she felt awkward in NOMA being a Latina. And I mean, it's the perception, right? Why was NOMA founded? Who was NOMA founded by? Who are, you know, we're focusing on the subject of NOMA, the National Organization of Minority Architects, to answer Brian's question. Who was there to tell our story about our Afro-Latinidad? Who is in the room? Who sits on these boards and makes these decisions? Not anybody that looks like us. So if we continue to have people that don't look like us, no one's going to advocate for us unless we have some kind of allyship. And so I don't think that I wanted to say that in the chat, but I'm just like, man, I ain't trying to piss nobody off. But, you know, I'm really, I'm speaking out of sincerity, and because as someone who co-founded a NOMA chapter here in Central Texas and kind of doesn't, hasn't been able to participate because of my schedule. That's one of my biggest frustrations, that, you know, a chapter that I helped co-found and create, that there isn't that Afro-Latinidad, that attention to Afro-Latinidad from the leadership there. And so history is written by who? Who are the people in power? Who are the ones making these decisions? So I think having you know, a heart-to-heart with NOMA leadership, NOMA National, because it needs to come from the top, right? We can do it within our small chapters as well, but if we don't have people like Carmen at the forefront, then it's not going to happen. And so, you know, to me, maybe as I get less busy, it's an opportunity to join NOMA Central Texas and come back and say, hey guys, this is some of my frustration that I voted to NOMA National. we should do something about it here in Austin and San Antonio. But yeah, I think just those having time to making time to have those conversations, to continue to have these kind of conversations. There's a part 2 or part 3 of this panel at NOMA. I think that would have been, great, just because of what we bring to the table, and just our history. We're always there was a line in Selena where there was like, she was not Latina enough for people, and then she wasn't white enough for white people. Where sometimes for many of us, we're, by the color of our skin, we're Black, but we're probably not even Black enough for some Black people, and not Latino enough for enough Latinos. So then we're here in the middle, sorry. So that's just something that I voiced my frustration about, that I would kind of reiterate here in the open to you all. Maybe someone in leadership can speak up at your chapter about these opportunities.
Well, without knowing much of any of the internal dynamics and politics of that, I think from what I'm hearing, Ricardo, and the question that was posed, I think it all goes to what is the agenda of the organization? And who controls the terms of setting the agenda? Because the truth of the matter is, and I really do think that if the voices are present at the decision-making table, then those interests will be present in the decisions. And so, yeah, I do think strategically it's something about saying, okay, so how are we gonna be present to advocate for this position, or for this perspective to become it? And in no small measure, I'm assuming that there's a lot of influence on this session right now, a lot. And so if this is a discussion that's been had amongst us, and if, my greatest hope is that people walked away, hopefully having learned something, definitely having listened, but if at the very least, maybe challenging some paradigms and some ideas, and helping you go back to your own respective labs and working it out. If that's been the case, and then you have happened to be in a position of influence, then that's how it starts to happen. So these forums, these spaces, these discussions, it's the complex of all of it. And that's how we begin to start to shift, because the truth is, this wasn't a discussion until it was a discussion, right? Now that Afro-Latinidad in some spaces is becoming more and more centered, what I would believe would be reasonable to follow is that voice will either be present in some of the decisions, or it being contested why it isn't present is going to start to be there, right? We're going to start to see some pushback, and I am super excited to see what that looks like, because I do think that they're healthy discussions to be had. Interestingly enough, though, and I'll say this, you want to know the one and only time I've never had to ever, I should have said this, you want to know my safest moment ever? In West Africa. Go figure. Go figure. I spent time in Nigeria and spent time in Ghana, and neither of them saw me as anything that, you just a cousin. That's all it was. You just a cousin. And so I find it very interesting how the conversation in and of itself shifts no matter where we are. Maybe that's the superpower, is that our ability to be flexible also follows that same paradigm.
Thanks for your responses, everybody. So I think we're running short on time already. Thanks again for sticking around. We did have another question, but I want to respect everybody's time for the evening, but I'll go ahead and send it to the panelists afterwards. And for everybody that's still on the call, we will be posting this recording onto our social media and our website so that you can watch it if you didn't catch the beginning. And for those that are no longer with us right now, I think it's something that needs to be heard. And thanks, Catherine, again for helping me co-host this panel. Thank you to all the panelists. I really appreciate the time that you gave to this conversation tonight. And I really look forward to connecting with you all again. I think that, this is just amazing to be able to meet all of you, and I look forward to any future conversations with you all. But I think we're gonna go ahead and close our panel for the night, but that's about it. Anybody has any other words? Catherine, do you have any words to share?
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight on such an important conversation. And to all of our moderators, please, I feel so inspired by the work that each one of you individually lead. And Omar, it's a pleasure to meet you for the first time as well. Brian, who is very active on our chat, thank you so much for highlighting and amplifying such an important question with our NOMA chapters and just the reflecting that has to be done, right? I think, all of our panelists are amazing. So if you ever do organize an event at your local chapter, don't hesitate to reach out to them. I've dropped their handles and information on the chat as well. And if you have any trouble finding them, please let us know and reach out to Design in Color. And we'll be able to connect you both there. I just want to say thank you for this space. It's hard to find a safe space, right, in general, and it's hard to find people like ourselves, right? And I think even putting this panel together, Olga knew 2 people, I knew 2 people, and it's just, let's bring them all together, and then it just, the stars aligned, right? And everyone's schedule worked out to be here. So I think being able to amplify your voices, and I think the next session will hopefully be amplifying the work that you all lead. We want to see what that looks like, right? And how you've empowered people through your work. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for this conversation as well.
Yeah, thanks again, Olga and Catherine, for this opportunity. It's un chin de mangú. El homofobo también, ¿qué te pasa? No, but it's been great to just connect to other Afro-Latinos in architecture, and just overall, it's, growing up in Miami, I saw them all the time. Texas, you don't see them as often. And sometimes we do need that little bit of backstory, which I'm very happy that, I got to recap from Omar, and I'm looking forward to just staying in touch with all these panelists in the future as well.
Yeah, word up on that. Are we still recording? Do we still have to be professional, Miss Bracamontes?
You're good.
I'm still recording, but feel free to be how you want to be.
I'm still in my office, so you definitely not gonna me. You're gonna get Mr. Mora.
I can stop the recording if you all want.
You're good. You're good.
For Omar's safety, please.
Right, I will stop the recording.
He doesn't want to go viral.